Have you ever stopped and wondered what is actually going on inside your head when you're trying to remember something? Anything at all? For decades, we kind of thought we had the answer, but it turns out a groundbreaking new study is showing us that working memory is so much weirder and way more elegant than we ever imagined. All right, let's get into it.
So picture this. Someone's giving you their phone number. You're repeating it over and over in your head, right? Just trying to hold on to it long enough to type it into your phone. That little mental juggling act, that's what scientists call working memory. It's basically the brain's temporary sticky note. But how does that note even stay stuck?
For the longest time, the main theory was, pretty straightforward. But as we're about to find out, that whole idea might have been a bit of an illusion, something created just by the way we were looking at things.
Okay, so this is the big switcheroo in thinking. The old idea was that to hold a memory, a bunch of your neurons would just fire constantly, a sustained, steady hum of electricity. But this new idea we're digging into today, it suggests it's not a hum at all. It's a code, a rhythm made of these brief, really powerful bursts of activity. So think less like a light bulb that's just on and more like Morse code tapping out a message.
So how on earth did scientists manage to crack this code? Well, it took a very rare and pretty incredible opportunity to look directly inside a living human brain while it was actively trying to remember something.
This whole new understanding comes from a really clever study published in the journal Neuroimage. Researchers set up this specific memory challenge for the brain, and in doing so, they created the perfect window to watch our visual working memory do its thing in real time.
The task itself was pretty simple but super effective. People would see 3 images, one right after the other. Then came the delay, and this is the critical part, where they had to hold those images in their mind's eye with absolutely nothing on the screen. And finally, they'd have to pick those original 3 images out of a bigger lineup. Now, here's the really cool part, how they measured all this brain activity. They worked with patients who, for totally separate medical reasons, already had electrodes implanted directly on the surface of their brains. This technique is called intracranial recording, and it gives you this just stunningly clear and precise signal. It's totally free from all the noise you'd get from recordings on the scalp. It's basically the most direct view we can possibly get of the human brain at work.
So the scientists were focused on 2 key brain regions, and you can think of them like this. First, you've got the prefrontal cortex, or PFC. That's like the brain's CEO. It's in charge, it handles focus and executive control. And then you have the temporal lobe, which is kind of like a visual database. It's absolutely essential for processing and figuring out what it is we're seeing.
So the experiment is all set up. The electrodes are listening in, and the scientists are ready. And what they found? It wasn't that steady hum that everyone was expecting. Not at all. It was something way more dynamic and way more interesting.
This quote from the paper really gets right to the heart of the discovery. See, for years, scientists would average the brain's activity over dozens of trials. And when you do that, it all smooths out and looks like one sustained signal. But what these researchers realized is that this was a statistical illusion. When they looked at each individual trial moment by moment, a totally different picture emerged.
And this slide just shows that difference brilliantly. Take a look at the top graph. That's the average data, right? That's the smooth, sustained activity we thought was memory. But now, look at the bottom graph. That's the reality of a single trial. It is not a constant hum, it's a series of short, powerful bursts. The brain isn't just holding one long note, it's playing a rhythm.
The researchers found 2 main types of these rhythmic bursts. First up, you have gamma bursts. These are super fast, high-frequency pulses. You can think of them as the go signal. These are the moments when the brain is actively processing and representing the information you're trying to remember.
And then, second, you have beta bursts. These are slower, lower-frequency pulses. So if gamma is the go signal, then beta is the hold signal. This one is all about control, about maintaining the memory, and, super importantly, about blocking out distractions so you can actually stay focused on what you're doing.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Is all this rhythmic bursting stuff just a neat little curiosity? Or does it actually determine whether you remember something or forget it?
And the answer is a huge, resounding yes. The data showed this incredibly clear pattern in the brain's CEO, the prefrontal cortex. On the trials where people remembered correctly, their brains showed lots of those high-frequency go bursts and very few of the hold bursts. But when they forgot, the pattern flipped entirely. Way fewer go bursts and a lot more hold bursts. So this rhythm, it's directly tied to how well you perform.
Okay, so memory isn't a hum, it's a rhythm. And that rhythm actually predicts success.
But we know the brain isn't just one thing, right? Different parts have to work together. So how do these different regions coordinate to create this rhythm? Well, that's where we find the secret of the brain's communication network.
This is the next logical step, right? You've got the CEO, the prefrontal cortex, and you've got the visual database, the temporal lobe, and they're both firing away in these rhythmic bursts. But are they actually talking to each other? Is there a coordinated conversation going on? Or is it more like two people just shouting in a room at the same time?
To figure that out, the researchers looked for something they call phase burst coupling. I know, it sounds really complex, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It just means that those powerful go bursts don't just happen randomly. They are precisely timed to lock on to the slower hold rhythm coming from another brain region. It's how they get on the same page.
Honestly, this is my favorite analogy for it. Just imagine the brain's CEO, the prefrontal cortex, is a conductor. It sets a steady, controlling beat. That's the beta, or the hold, rhythm. And it uses that steady beat to precisely cue a loud cymbal crash. That's the gamma go burst from the orchestra's percussion section, which is our temporal lobe. See, it's not random shouting. It's a perfectly timed musical performance. And what is so incredible is that this is exactly what the data shows. This isn't just a nice metaphor. If you look at these charts, they show that the message bursts coming from the temporal lobe weren't random at all. They consistently fired at the very peak of the timing rhythm that was coming from the prefrontal cortex. They are perfectly in sync. This right here, this is the secret code the brain uses to communicate. So let's just step back for a second. What does all of this mean when we put it all together? Well, it fundamentally changes our entire understanding of how our brains hold onto a thought. So let's just recap what we've learned. First, working memory is not a constant, steady hum. It's a dynamic, living rhythm. Second, all this brain activity happens in these short, powerful little bursts. Third, the balance of those go gamma bursts and hold beta bursts is directly connected to how well we remember something. And finally, different parts of the brain talk to each other using this incredibly precise, perfectly timed code. So the next time you're holding a thought in your mind, don't picture a computer chip with a little switch flipped on. Instead, I want you to picture a symphony, a dynamic, rhythmic, and just beautifully coordinated performance of electrical bursts, all timed perfectly to create the feeling of a memory.
This discovery just blows the doors open to a fascinating new frontier. I mean, if working memory runs on this rhythmic code, what else does? This could be the key to understanding not just memory, but attention, focus, maybe even consciousness itself. It feels like the symphony is really just beginning.